We so often hear of mining asteroids, but the moon outmasses every known asteroid combined dozens of times over again, and is closer to Earth too. So what would life be like mining on the moon? Louise and Clark are twins that have the dubious honor of being amongst the first 10 kids ever born on the moon, and the first twins. And while they've been off the moon into space, they've never been to Earth and find the idea of trying to live in its gravity a bit intimidating. But a trip there is on their bucket list for whenever they make the big find, the one that in theory lets them retire, but in practice would probably just be used to buy new gear because they love their work. They spend a lot of time driving around in the Louisiana, which more resembles a freight truck or a recreational vehicle than a dune buggy, but they got one of those too, which they carry along. Both are battery powered, and they have a lot of solar panels they can unroll at their base camp as awnings and walls to protect them from the dust and sunlight during the long lunar days. They also have two 5 kilowatt radioisotope thermal generators, each massing 50 kilograms or 110 pounds if it were on Earth, as much as Louise would weigh. These are backpack carryable units that they also use during the 2 weeks of darkness. Their individual expeditions usually last 2 to 3 months, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what they find, so they have to spend a few long nights on each trip before returning to Armstrong, their hometown, or sometimes another base if they are closer to one and low on supplies. Most recently they left Mukai, a Japanese installation experimenting in rice crop variations for growing on the moon, and which had commissioned them to look for any water sources near them that might be good for expansion. It was a quick and successful mission, and they took part of their pay in rice packets and opted to skip a resupply trip, so their diet has been a bit monotonous of late, and they are getting ready to explore a lunar lava tube to see if they might find ice in it. Ice isn't the only thing they search for, but it is their specialty, and together they've explored many craters and lava tubes over the years. But this will be their 29th lava tube, and also they are about to turn 29, so it's a bit of a special occasion. As usual, they'll set up camp a decent way away from the lava tube opening, and as they're expecting nightfall in a couple more terrestrial days, they're picking a lower spot to help them keep their heat in, and will let their solar recharge their vehicle batteries in the meantime till the sun sets. They send a robot in first to scout, and it's on a power line tether that is strong enough to pull it up or to hold them. Once they confirm it's safe and if there's any positive signs, then they'll descend into it after the sun sets and put up their secondary camp. Often with lava tubes they'll do inspections at the rim, as that often gives some evidence of what to expect inside, but also to make sure they've located some strong spots to put hooks and pulleys in for the descent. This particular tube is only about 10 meters wide, which is huge compared to terrestrial lava tubes, but nothing like a record on Luna, and they decide to set up a pair of membranes with attached airlocks at the bottom to enclose and pressurize a small segment to serve as their secondary camp, heated by one of their generators, with the other back at base camp recharging their batteries and keeping their other gear from freezing. Barring an emergency, they will remain here for the whole lunar night as they typically travel during lunar day when sunlight allows faster charging of vehicle batteries. The generator will actually heat the enclosed segment by running metallysis on the local rock to produce metal and oxygen as a byproduct, and the excess heat generated in this process will keep that air warm and them too. Sadly, it doesn't take them too long to discover that while the site has some resources in it, it's nothing too special, and after documenting their finds for 2 weeks and submitting them for a modest but underwhelming surveying bounty, they pack up their camps and move on. But it's not long before they spot a strange sight, a person lying on the ground in their spacesuit near a small solar array on the crater rim wall. Regrettably, they are dead. It appears to have been a young woman who fell down the wall and tore her suit open, and her suit shows markings of the Svarog, a mobile mining platform that's been operating in the area, and they contact them with the bad news. Its commander, Anton Stanislav, takes the news in stride and invites the twins to join them that evening at their anticipated location. The late crew member, Petra, had a reckless streak and was not fitting in well with the crew and volunteered for a short mission to place a monitor on the crater rim wall to aid communication and monitoring of the area, and they had just been about to begin searching for her. The monitor she was to have set up would, ironically but tragically, have made it possible for them to locate her beacon, but was never turned on. They offer hospitality and a recharge and to trade some food and supplies. The Svarog runs on a multi-megawatt fission reactor and trundles across the lunar regolith at relatively high speed, and when it reaches destinations that have been determined to be good for mining, it sets down and engages in extraction by metalysis, crunching ore into powder and separating the oxygen out of it. For them, oxygen is mostly a waste product, and they use a lot of it for blowing regolith clean from their vehicle and gear. Lunar regolith is vicious on equipment and people. The Svarog usually leaves a hard pad behind it as it goes, clear of regolith and ideal for future installations to set up or for ships to land on without blowing dust around or sinking into the lunar equivalent of quicksand. Typically they do not return to base at all. Supply shuttles come to them, land on those pads, and trade out the supplies with metal and oxygen. Sometimes cargo ships bring new crew or carry crew off for vacation or never to return. And this is the first time anyone has died in the Svarog's history, so they don't know if they should send Petra's body back, but the decision is made to bury her in the pad they're currently making and name it in her honor. It's a big deal too, as the moon's whole population isn't much over 10,000 yet, and while she won't be the first lost in operations, not even this year, it's still a fairly rare event and one of shared mourning moon-wide. Luis and Clark are welcome guests and decide to travel with the Svarog for a while to piggyback along and take the time and assistance for some repairs and enjoy some companionship and ask the crew what the metal they're mining is mostly for. The lunar commodity market for metal is doing good right now, particularly aluminum being used to fabricate solar shades at the Earth-Sun L1 Lagrange point, with the hope of using them in tandem with some orbital mirror and shade arrays for weather control back on Earth. Most of the Svarog's crew is from Earth originally, and note how the twins don't really seem to entirely understand weather. Breezes and storms are intellectually familiar to them, but not intuitively so. Life on the moon is an interesting mix of exciting and dull, but one thing it lacks is weather. It's a harsh mistress in a bleak place, though beautiful in its own way, as without air there are far more stars to see during the long nights, and every distant crater wall is far sharper without the air giving a visual blur and haze. In many places domes are going up, and underground habitats being built, but for the crew of the Svarog and their guests, it's the nomad life for them, and if that ever stops on the moon, perhaps they'll try their hand at nomadic life as an asteroid miner or prospector instead. We'll discuss some more on mining, and mobile mining specifically, in a moment, but for those wondering, no, the episode was not inspired by the Whalers on the Moon song from Futurama, though it starts running through my head every time I've worked on this script, its original version on Nebula, or any of the production involving it. For those who remember when the original episode came out on Nebula last year, we started off with a discussion of what inspired the episode before launching into the story itself. And while we've done narrative stories before, all the way back to early episodes, one thing I decided shortly after writing our 400th episode, Life in the Year 2323 AD, which featured 7 loosely intertwined vignettes, is that it was more fun to start the episode with the story, then switch to a discussion afterwards. And the original episode of this was written not long after that episode, and episodes on lunar mining and mobile cities, with our episode on atmospheric mining shortly to follow. Those episodes were definitely a discussion of the science and process, so I felt like doing a tale about the lifestyle of it, and did one on life as an asteroid miner as a sequel to this for Nebula a couple months later. That's about when I decided I was committed to doing a monthly episode on Nebula, and they would stay there for a year, then migrate over to YouTube and our other platforms. The ones made before then weren't really made with that intent, and often needed overhauling to be regular episodes, which was fine. Like today, there's always more to say on a topic, or just wouldn't make the conversion at all like our extended editions. It also lets me have an excuse to re-record these earlier ones, where I just had begun speech therapy again after surgery on my nose and tongue to help correct or further mitigate my speech impediment. The episode had been stirring in my mind at the time for reasons mentioned, and also because of a talk my friend Pascal Lee had given at the International Space Development Conference back in 2023. If you recognize the name, he's hardly been an unknown figure in astronomy and SETI, but made big news earlier this year when he found a colossal volcano on Mars we'd missed all this time. He and my friend Rod Pyle also gave another great presentation at this year's conference on the base Pascal set up in the Arctic to help simulate off-world conditions and train there, which Rod is trying to talk me into visiting, and it is tempting. At the conference last year, though, he was talking about the path from various landing sites our rovers or miners would need to follow to get to resources, and how surprisingly difficult that was and how convoluted those might need to be safe. How many would require long roundabouts because the slope was too steep, with reminders of how sharp and uneroded the landscape there is, how damaging the regolith would be, and how some crater might be full of dust that an unwary traveler might sink into. As we get ready to go back to the moon, it seems like all agree the goal needs to be permanent bases and ISRU, in situ resource utilization, our topic for last month's Nebula exclusive, coincidentally. With in situ resource utilization, we can build all those awesome orbitals and sunshades and fuel depots that will carry us into the space development era. In many ways, that's all the moon, or most space rock, really tend to be to me. Big old resource stockpiles for getting the materials we need to craft those awesome megastructures and usher in the era of the mighty civilizations that will forge them and dwell upon them. And yet, I find myself entranced by the lives of the folks down on the moon doing that mining, especially those that might travel around, prospectors or mobile miners, maybe whole mobile mining towns, so it seemed a good topic for a bonus episode. One obvious point channel regulars or moon enthusiasts might have caught is that a lot of this could be done through automation and remote control. Even without AI, most mining processes will be simple enough for automation, and we are only a few seconds round trip for communication to the moon for remote control. I do not doubt that in a more distant future this might be very, very automated, but there's also futures where we shy away from too much AI, or simply don't get there that fast, or even have laws or treaties that require claims on minerals to be made in person, not by robot. They are my justification for the story. Indeed, the more discussions by space lawyers I've heard, and the more time I've spent in discussion with them on it since becoming the president of the National Space Society, the more I've come to think it very likely that our early laws on space settlement and mining will lean heavily on the classic idea that to claim a place, you have to be actively working it, and otherwise others can come by and make use of it and eventually claim it as their own. So I would guess that possession being 9/10 the law, actually asserting something is in your possession will require you to park some people there. Such being the case, you might as well have them doing some work, and they will be better at doing many tasks while physically present than a robot or teleoperator might be. Our reasoning usually goes that it's just too expensive to put people up there, as one might be able to do a job better than, say, 5 folks here on Earth working remotely, or some robot there and with a simple mind. But if you have to pay to have them there anyway, that math no longer applies. Indeed, I suspect that will be part of the motivation for building that into territorial claims in space, to encourage actual space settlement. Our story today followed Lewis and Clark, a sister and brother who traveled together prospecting for ice deposits on the moon, and the Svarog, a mobile mining platform that roams around to good deposits and harvests them. The Lewis and Clark expedition in early American history is the origin for the name. Svarog, incidentally, is the Slavic god of fire and mining, and I've been enjoying reading up on Slavic mythology the month prior, so it seemed appropriate. Channel regulars will probably note the similarities of Lewis and Clark to Camille and Leonardo Cormier, who appear in our Living in Lava Tubes episode from a couple months back, and who reappear in Colonizing Ganymede. They also draw a bit on the Robinson family we'll encounter in Life as an Asteroid Miner, but for canon purposes, they are a different pair of intrepid siblings. Is it then realistic to think that people will live on the moon mining it? Yes, hardly a certainty, but it seems more likely than not at the moment. The better question might be if the mobile or nomadic life makes much sense for miners, and that is harder to say. Prospectors certainly, and that may indeed be easiest to accomplish with a mix of drones or robotic rovers and folks driving around to dig in a bit to promising spots and investigate. It also makes sense for helium-3 mining, which is something that's often raised in interest to the moon. Helium-3 is minimal, and we expect to roll over an area, clear it out, and roll somewhere else to rinse and repeat. Very much a process like the spice crawlers of Dune, especially the old Dune 2 video game or its successors. As I've said before, I don't think helium-3 is going to be the big lunar industry folks often wish to imagine it as. Helium-3 is the preferred fusion fuel for aneutronic fusion, which is harder to achieve than deuterium-deuterium fusion but emits less damaging neutrons, which we think might be easier on reactor wear and tear and require less shielding. This makes it very attractive as a compact fusion option, so great for spaceships, and we may one day achieve helium-3 fusion. The stuff is a good deal more common in the outer solar system, and while rarer than deuterium, it makes up about 1 part in a million of helium lying around the universe and solar system in general. Given the sheer amount of helium out there, that makes it abundant enough, especially if you're using it for ships and using deuterium or regular hydrogen for main power generation for your civilization. Problem is, while deuterium is plentiful in Earth's ocean, helium isn't plentiful on Earth, and neither is helium-3. There's some on the moon, but there's way more in the outer solar system, and if you have fusion engines of any kind, getting there and back with wads of it becomes very easy. So you mine for helium-3 out there, not on the moon, especially since you would get deuterium fusion sooner and easier, and could use that to take a bigger ship out there initially if needed. On the flip side, you might see a brief era of mining helium-3 there, so we should not rule it out, but it feels like a narrow window of time, development, and technological progress that won't exist unless all those pieces align, and even then, only briefly to jumpstart interplanetary settlement and those outer system helium-3 mines. And yet, the gold rush in San Francisco was not that long an era, and we got a settled California out of it, which leads the world in computers and has an economy in its own right bigger than all but the largest nations. It's also near where I was born at, so personally significant too. Hence a brief epoch might be sufficient to do the same for the moon, especially given all the other advantages lunar mining and development has there, albeit more stationary enterprises by and large. That said, it's not the only pathway for nomadic moon mining. The moon is covered in craters, and folks sometimes forget that a crater gets made by something, and a big something, and that chunks of it remain afterwards. There's no weather or seismic activity recycling those spots and rearranging their components, so if a small metallic asteroid lands on the moon and leaves a crater, there's a big chunk of it right there on the bottom, and a good amount spread around the immediate area, buried shallowly under some moon dust. Best figure I've seen is about a millimeter of new dust per millennia, or a meter per million years. That figure, which Brian O'Brien, a physicist at the University of Western Australia, worked out from some overlooked Apollo mission data about a decade ago, was 10 or more times higher than previous estimates had indicated. It means a lot of places are covered in dust and probably have heaps of metals down below them that might be regarded very properly as buried treasures. It's not going to be some rich vein of metal you can mine for decades either. You'll sweep the area out, and scoop out that meteor leftovers and done. That seems very like a job for nomadic miners like those we visited on the Svarog today. Also, there is water ice, good for water for people and plants, and good for rocket fuel. It is likely to not be plentiful and quick to deplete from a place. In the long term, water is insanely abundant in the outer solar system, so could be brought in and provide some coin that outer system settlements might use to pay for imports from the huge lunar industries that may develop to help us conquer the solar system. But in the short term, those water sources on the moon are invaluable, and you may need to roam around to find them and roam again once you deplete a spot. As for the mobile mining platforms, it seems very likely they might move places and set up shop for a couple weeks, for a light or a night phase and then move on. I don't know if that would be on wheels or tracks or some other means of locomotion, but the lack of air and low gravity allows even very large machines to viably trundle along the surface. Our Mobile Cities episode from last year showed how that could be viable even on a place like Earth where it is harder. Though on the flip side, that same lunar dust and razor-sharp regolith, which a mobile mining platform probably kicks out even more of, is rough on machinery and moving parts. Entire outposts and factories or refineries would be able to be made mobile and likely need lots of cleaning and maintenance. There would be no shortage of things for the crew to do while on the move to the next site of interest, and no shortage of jobs for prospectors seeking out ideal sites for those mining platforms to move to. As interest in lunar exploration grows, driven by agencies like NASA and private companies alike, the development of nomadic mining platforms may become a key area of technological advancement. International treaties and space law will also play crucial roles in determining how lunar resources are to be managed and utilized responsibly. Overall, while still largely conceptual and in the developmental phase, the prospect of nomadic mining platforms on the Moon represents a significant step forward in humanity's ongoing relationship with space, blending exploration with utilization in new and innovative ways. Whether or not we'll see giant mobile mining platforms like the Svarog is hard to say, but I give it decent odds, and probably in the next century or so at that. So who knows, maybe you or someone you know will live to be a nomadic miner on the Moon one day. So as mentioned, this episode originally came out on Nebula, our streaming service, where we release a new episode once a month exclusively there for a year, along with other bonus content like extended editions. In this month's Nebula exclusive, Planetary Archives and Stasis Vaults, we'll be exploring stasis technology and time fortresses and what their uses are for a civilization and how that usage might shape such a civilization, including those that might have mini-citizens regularly going on ice to leapfrog forward in time. That's out now on Nebula, where you can see all our episodes early and ad-free, along with exclusive and bonus content from myself and many other creators, like our monthly Nebula exclusive episodes. You can join now for about $2.50 a month, about the price of the drink or snack you've been enjoying during the episode, but we also now have lifetime memberships available and gift cards that let you share Nebula with friends and family. When you sign up at my link, go.nebula.tv/IsaacArthur and use my code IsaacArthur, you not only get access to all the great stuff Nebula offers, like Planetary Archives and Stasis Vaults, you'll also be directly supporting this show. And again, for those of you who want to share everything Nebula has to offer with your family and friends, Nebula is now offering annual gift cards. Use the link gift.nebula.tv/IsaacArthur to give a year of Nebula to a friend for just $30. So today we looked at life as a prospector or nomadic miner on the Moon. And next week we'll start August off by joining Colonial Governor Maxwell Augustine and the Olympic fleet migrating to the planet of New Actium as we see what it would be like to be the governor of a generation ship and a fledgling colony. After that, we'll return to the topic of the Fermi Paradox on August 8th to consider how migration to the galactic core or rim or other universes might explain the Great Silence. Then it will be time for Sci-Fi Sunday, as we examine the popular notion from sci-fi that humans might have been uplifted by distant visitors or some more ancient civilizations native to Earth. If you'd like to get alerts when those and other episodes come out, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. You can also help support the show by becoming a member here on YouTube or Patreon, or check out other ways to help at isaacarthur.net. You can also catch all of SFIA's episodes early and ad-free on our streaming service, Nebula, along with hours of bonus content like Planetary Archives and Stasis Vaults at go.nebula.tv/IsaacArthur. As always, thanks for watching and have a great week.